Hi folks, I wanted to make a video on the subject of technology addiction or screen addiction. That's kind of a misnomer, that term, because, well, a screen like that isn't very addictive. I light it up and it tells me who's phoning me, or I use it to tap a message. It doesn't have addictive properties to it. Yes, that is my phone. It's a dumb phone. I've never had a smartphone. Well, actually, I tell a lie. A long time ago, like before the year 2000, I had the Nokia communicator phone, which was kind of this huge big brick of a thing that would open up in the fashion of a laptop computer, and it was very impressive at the time. It was at a time when phones were generally getting smaller and smaller, and people would say, "Why is your phone so big?" And then I would just open it up and they would go, "Oh, wow." But that was then and this is now. And I'm not really sure what prompted me to go for a dumb phone. I think what it was I just realized I wasn't making all that many phone calls and I didn't want to be on a contract anymore. And even though it was an impressive phone, doing word processing on it was a bit of a task, given the small size of the keys. So, I just went for a pay and go phone. That was a small one. I kept it for many years, and that's the second pay and go phone that I've owned. And it was £5 to buy, brand new, and I have to charge it like maybe once a week, if even that, depending on how much I've used it. And that's even with leaving it on overnight. Yeah. Anyway, we're getting off track here. Technology addiction. Is there any doubt really that that is a thing? When we see young people, and maybe not so young people, with their faces buried in their smartphones over and over at a time when they've got company. You picture a bunch of people sitting around together and there's conversations happening and there's somebody just staring at their phone and scrolling through messages over and over and just ignoring reality. And all their focus in this virtual space, this artificial reality that they've chosen instead of what's around them. Yeah, there's something wrong with that when people are doing that, and a lot of people behave like that. So it's not really the screen that's at fault, it's the content that's being delivered by the screen. I'm thinking specifically really about apps like Facebook and services that Google provide. I think a large part of the problem with Facebook is that it's addictive by design because it's based on an advertising model. Facebook is free for the user, so the company has to make money, and the only way they can do that is through advertising. So it makes sense for them to have you in front of your phone on that app as much as possible to generate as much revenue for them. So it's by design that these things are addictive, and that's bad. It's bad for you. It's good for Facebook, but it's bad for you. Google is similar. All their services are free, but they're ad based, and both Google and Facebook essentially function as data collection services. To use them, you have to consent to them poking through the cookies that are stored in your internet browser so that they can take a look at what you've been looking at when you're on other sites like Amazon to see what your spending habits are. It's really invasive. Now you can say, well, if you haven't been doing anything wrong, you've nothing to worry about. But that's not the point. It's a really creepy invasion of your privacy. And I'm on Facebook, I use it. I was a late adopter of it, and I picked it up because my book iUniverse was coming out and I wanted to use it as a promotional avenue. But at the same time, I ended up networking with a lot of people, some of whom were people I knew in the past and I hadn't spoken to in a long time, and I'm glad I'm in touch with them again, and Facebook is the means that allowed that to happen. So but believe me, I have thought about packing Facebook in. And I'm trapped in Google services because here we are on YouTube, owned by Google. And I could go on and on about the good old days of YouTube before Google, back when you could have video responses. And actually, I'm going to dedicate this video to a chap called Robert Z, because it was his April contest on his channel that kind of prompted me to make this video, which is about addiction. This is not an entry to the contest. I'm a little bit late for that, but I just wanted to make this video anyway because he put the subject in my mind. Robert basically, Robert's addiction was alcohol, and he's been sober now for 2 years. But he put a contest up on his channel with a prize, and he asked people to make video responses on the subject of addiction. And I think that was a very good thing to do. I'll be interested to see what responses are posted. And I'll link his channel down below if you want to check it out. It's mostly about music appreciation, the vinyl community, that sort of thing. Anyway, so hi Robert. Addiction, yeah. Let's backtrack a little bit here, and I'll talk about my own experience of addiction using technology. And this I think, what I'm going to say here, this is the important thing about how to actually overcome it. I bought an Xbox 360 many years ago, I guess 2004, 2005, and I realized as I was using it that it was kind of a filler. It was something that I did to cure boredom and loneliness in the evenings. And it was very easy for me to spend 5 or 6 hours in front of a game in the evenings. And the games were designed, although they weren't based on an advertising model, they certainly were designed to be very addictive. Not like how games were done in the distant past of the 8-bit computer era in the 1980s, where the general structure of a game followed the rule, easy to play, hard to master. Games had very little memory back then, so they were generally based on the same thing was happening all the time, and it was very hard to succeed. So it was all about just getting a better and better score, staying alive longer and longer, developing a skill, in other words. It wasn't really a big 40-hour story arc the way games are today. So they're addictive. They're much more addictive today than they were in the past. And I actually have, I'm ashamed to admit this, but I have a touch of osteoarthritis in the neck as a result of extended periods of gaming. That's not going to go away. I'm not in pain with it, but I've kind of got clicking in the neck that I didn't have before I made that stupid mistake. Now, how did I overcome that? As many of you know who have watched my channel, an event happened to me in 2008. A sort of event that people typically call a spiritual awakening, right? I wasn't zapped from on high. I just became aware of a form of spirituality that was real in a way that something like Christianity wasn't real. I got in touch with a genuine esoteric spirituality that really enriched my life, and it provoked in me a massive appetite for learning. And right after this happened, the Xbox took a complete backseat in my life, completely naturally, as did other addictions relating to computer screens, right? It was wonderful actually, but unfortunately I suppose you could say it was kind of a honeymoon period in terms of, you know, when you find something new, it occupies your time and it's really exciting until it stops being exciting. But yeah, that was quite a wonderful year or so right after that event in my life where I didn't even feel like touching the Xbox. So the key thing here, here's the point that I want to make. Addictions are designed to how will I word this? When we are bored or lonely, those are the times that we are the most susceptible to addiction. So it stands to reason that if you want to overcome an addiction in your life, don't be bored. Don't be lonely. Take steps in your life to avoid that. It really does seem to be that if you're bored, screen addiction is something that steps in to fill that vacuum. Because the screen is like a dopamine factory. You want a dopamine hit in your brain, to get the pleasure centers activated. So what do? Call up Facebook, call up WhatsApp, call up YouTube, call up eBay, call up whatever it is you want to call up that just gets your dopamine flowing. You see? The antidote is to get passionate about something productive in your life. For me, it can be a creative project, and I've done many creative projects over the years, and I continue to do so. That's the real antidote to addictive behaviors for me. This isn't really a video about all kinds of addiction. I mean, a substance addiction, that's a different kettle of fish. If you're addicted to something like cocaine, it may well be true that if you're bored, you're more likely to seek out a drug, but that's a much more difficult thing that I have no experience in handling. And even things like alcohol, it seems to be you have to go cold turkey with these things to get any sort of progress. Whereas things like Facebook, they're not in and of themselves bad things as long as you can manage the time that you spend on these things. So yeah, conquer boredom. Take steps in your life to get interested in something. Fill the void in your life with something that is better than these addiction-inducing applications on computer screens. And for goodness sake, if you are the sort of person who can't put their phone away when you are in company with other people, deal with that. That's bad. That's a real sign that you have a major problem. Because you shouldn't be bored in that situation. You're there talking to people, so deal with that. Is there anything else I wanted to say? Yeah, I mean, I have this thing here. It's an Apple iPod. I don't own it. It's a perk from work, really. And I mean, if I didn't have this from work, I would probably never buy one of these things. But now that I've got one, I tend to use it. And it just becomes another thing. I don't have all that much on it. I have YouTube, eBay, I've got my Gmail on it, IMDb is on it, Facebook, Amazon Kindle application. A lot of these things though, and here's what I hate about devices like this. It has no keyboard, there's no mouse, you can't do really complex things with it that you can do with a personal computer. By and large, most of the programs that are available, most of the apps that are available for tablets are entirely consumption based. You have your Amazon Prime, you've got your Netflix, you've got your WhatsApp, you've got all these things. It's all to do with consuming. It's very rarely to do with creating. Whereas a PC or a Mac, you can create things, you can load up a programming language, you can do all sorts of things that you just can't do on a tablet. And I think it's really sad now that a lot of people are moving away from having a personal computer in their home in preference for one of these. So computers has now become predominantly about consuming, and that's, to me, that is really sad. Yeah. I think this is part of why I'm so fond of retro technology and the ZX Spectrum computer from the 1980s. It was just, somehow it was just a better time. it was the first generation of computers. I did all kinds of creative things with it in terms of programming. And when the Commodore Amiga came out in the late 80s, mostly, I mean, I played games like everybody did, but I really got into making music with that computer. And if you look back in my history, there's an hour-long video where I've put up what I consider to be the best musical pieces that I made in the space of a decade with that computer. And the motivation was just there to do it. And I actually find now it's actually harder to get motivated to do creative things with a computer because there are so many consumptive things that are clamoring for my attention, that are there to give me the instant dopamine hit. I've actually just recently abandoned my subscription to Amazon Prime Video, which I had ongoing for the last probably 4 years. Maybe I've had that. I'm not sure. 3 or 4 years. The only reason I took it up was I got broadband internet at my home for the first time. Believe it or not, I didn't have broadband here. I know it's strange for a guy who works in tech to say these things, that he doesn't have broadband in his home, but I had like a 4G sort of broadband, which was very slow and clunky. But anyway, I got proper broadband fitted in my house, and as a perk, they sent me an Amazon Fire TV stick for free. I already had an Amazon Prime subscription by default because at the time I was using it for their DVD rental service, and they threw the Amazon Prime in with that. So all I had to do was put in my username and password, and I instantly had all this streaming video that I'd been paying for it for months and never used it and never even investigated it until I got the Fire Stick. And then I was hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. Now, it's fine to watch TV programs, to watch movies, of course, but you're just presented with all this stuff that's just clamoring for your attention, and there's just so much there, and you're scrolling through lists of things, and all these dopamine hits are waiting for you. And just lately I've realized I've just had enough of spending so much time in front of the television screen. I don't actually have a TV license. You know, you're supposed to have one in the UK, but I don't have an aerial plugged into my TV. I opted out of television broadcasting a decade ago, and I've never looked back. So I'm not doing that illegally. I don't have a license because I don't receive BBC broadcasting. But yeah, the Amazon Prime thing for me was getting me back into old addictive habits of just casual TV watching and the digital equivalent of channel surfing. And I was on Netflix for a little while, about a year ago, and they recently offered me, I only stayed for a month or two and then I quit. They recently offered me another month trial for free, so I just took it because it was free. And again, there I was on Netflix scrolling through things and watching far more TV than is good for me in the evenings. Just, you go through an entire evening and then you look back and you think, what a waste of an evening. And that happens to me far too often. So it's time to take steps. So no more Amazon Prime, no more Netflix. I'm actually more of a fan of collecting movies and TV shows that are my favorites, you know, buying a digital copy of these things. And then you have your collection of favorite things that you can watch once in a while when you feel like it, rather than having this constant barrage of entertainment in your face. Yeah. So folks, this has been a bit rambly, but I hope there's some information there that you might find useful. I just feel I have to take steps. I want my life to be about more than just turning into a zombie in front of a rectangle in the corner of the living room, you know. And it's so easy to fall into these patterns of behavior. So remember, folks, the main point I wanted to make was the one about boredom and loneliness. That's when you're most susceptible. So don't go for the typical filler behaviors. Try to shake your life up a bit. Try to find something to be passionate about. And as Joseph Campbell would say, follow your bliss. All right, folks, take care. Oh, before I go, I will just mention I'm doing a few things to promote my book at the minute, trying to get onto podcasts. Last week I did an interview at Trans Resistor Radio. That's nothing to do with transgender, by the way. Trans Resistor Radio. I'll put a link below. It's an hour-long podcast where I talked about all sorts of things. So if you've been wondering where I've been for a while and hoping I'd make more videos, well, that'll hopefully give you something to watch in the meantime. So please check that out. It's a really good podcast, actually. I've been looking through some of the other shows that the host, Aaron Franz, has, and it's very interesting stuff. So please do check that out. And remember, iUniverse is available from Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and all the usual places. All right, folks, take care.